Any major problems with that, Ms. Sims? I think what he's saying, it's the same thing they did with fortification, Bellhaven, and I think Councilman Lindsay have worked in that regard for a number of years. I don't think it's anything new. Yeah, yeah.
We had an overlay district on High Street, but we completely rezoned the Fortification Street corridor, and I would rely on the experts as to which they think is the most appropriate on this corridor.
Is it ready to come out of committee? Could you feel, or you need another meeting?
I mean, I don't know the initial attorney that was working with Councilman Stamps on this issue, but my first mind in being in zoning is to make sure that we run this by the zoning administrator and the planning department to see if this is how they want to move forward, because I know they would be essential in helping you try to form that new zoning or make sure that zoning district was okay. So my first mind would say, sure, it can come out of committee, but once it hits council, before it hits the agenda, for you to just kind of just touch bases with the zoning administrator.
Yeah, so we've been pushing this issue. This issue was introduced in May of 2016. And we worked with the policy analysts at the time and legal and zoning, because at first I wanted to just make it permanent. But they told us we couldn't do it permanently. So then I said, well, what can we do? And they said, we can do a 1-year moratorium, and that will give you time to work on overlay districts and things like that for those corridors. And so now we just had a meeting last week with Councilman Banks, Councilman Tillman, and Merit Health, looking at the Highway 18 corridor. And so we'll be working towards some things in the area, but what we don't want is to, have these types of businesses pop up when we're trying to put other types of businesses there.
Could we request Councilman Stamps, because we told Councilman Lindsay that on Thursday we'll handle those items. If Councilman Lindsay says okay, could we add Councilman Stamps' item to Thursday and try to get it voted out of committee?
Dr. Kumar and Ms. Ainsworth.
They'll give all y'all enough time to work through it. Councilman Banks?
Yeah, I was just going to say I support my colleague in this. I also would like to look and see if there's some areas in Ward 6 that I can tag right on in here with him.
Okay.
And Mr. Stokes, for
yes,
me, I know other people have other issues that they want to press forward on, so any of my other issues I have in planning, we can just take them up at a later time.
Okay.
And I know other council people got some street renamers and things like that they want to push forward. I want to monopolize the time.
Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Tillman.
The administration at each meeting mentioned that y'all coming up with a master plan. What's including your master plan?
You come up here, if you would, please, sir.
I'm trying to see if these type of things gonna be addressed.
So yes, we are working on several neighborhoods that we think are more suitable for new thoughts on how to rezone them, how to work them into more human scale neighborhood. But as far as these types of businesses is concerned, this is something that we have not looked into with any thought so far.
Been looking into residential, but not business corridors.
Yes, so for these business corridors, we would be able to give you better thoughts at the next meeting.
Okay, this is some of your next meeting. So, good communication that the council is working towards, and you all need to know it.
Sure, absolutely, yes.
Could we get also, we have a 62, the sign ordinance, get all council members a copy of the sign ordinance so we can completely revisit the sign ordinance. All council members get a copy of it, and that way we'll know what we need to look at. This is something we probably won't take up before April, but it'll give us a chance to start talking about, discussing what we need to do. And if we could look at item 1, the curfew, and it's going to take a public hearing and a lot of different people coming to talk to us about the curfew, and I wish the police department was here today. The problem we run into, we recently had a 14-year-old that was involved in capital murder. We had 3 underage people who killed the young man at Kroger's. We got a problem with a lot of these young people out here late at night doing all kind of silly things. Now, the curfew is not going to be the panacea, ain't going to solve all the problems, but it would give us our police department a tool to try to get some of these young people off the street that's creating havoc throughout these neighborhoods. The problem we had before is that we could not take the young people to the youth detention center. So what I'm seeing, several years ago when they renovated City Hall, they moved us to the old youth detention center. But nothing has really been in there. That would be the perfect place to utilize again. City owned it before it go down anymore. But we got to do something with a lot of these young people that's out here breaking in houses, stealing guns and everything else, because we keep ignoring the problem, it's gonna get worse. Now, I see where in behavior they cover with cameras. Now, that's proactive. We got to become proactive because you can't just allow people to come and destroy your communities and you just look for the police department. You're calling them after the fact and the police officers, you know, we got to do something to give them a tool. Some of these, it's just a very small percentage of these young people that's doing the wrong thing. The vast majority are doing the right thing. But those doing the wrong thing, they hurting a whole lot of these communities, and they killing more and more. And, you know, something that we need to deal with, but the police department's not here today, so we'll deal with it. I see Miss Griffin is here. Miss Griffin, if you can help guide us, and I know you've been calling everybody, this taxi cab ordinance, and Mr. Priest had called several weeks ago, want to discuss. Could you let us know where we are with that? What's the status of it? And we thank you so much for your hard work. And I know you've been calling, you've been trying to get getting us to influence you on several items that you just didn't want to fill in the blanks you want the council to.
Rosalind Griffin, Office of the City Attorney. How we left it was that we sent an email to all the council members requesting their input. To date, I haven't received any responses to that email. So I can resend it, and I need y'all's input so we can finalize it.
Okay, what about the cab drivers?
We've incorporated all of their changes.
Okay. Do we have a final product? And that way we can give input from that.
We have the latest draft that included the requested changes, and so you all have some decisions to make about which direction you want to go in. Because you have requested input from the cab drivers, you have requested input from the Uber drivers, then you have requests from the airport authority. So assuming that you all agree with those requests, then we can go into those changes incorporated. But because it's a policy, you just need to know which direction the council wants to go in. And all of that should be in that lane. I can resend it.
Do you have a draft or something you can kind of talk to us about right now, just in general?
I do not have the draft with me, but it's the same draft the last time we had a planning committee meeting. And if everybody doesn't have it, I can certainly email it out to give it back.
Okay, all right. Members of this body, she said, I'm gonna come right to you, Mr. Bankman Woman. She said that from the email she sent, do you feel uncomfortable with the direction she's going? Would we rather let her go ahead and move it forward? Because when we don't send something back, that means we kind of support what you're doing. You just moving forward.
But we have to be careful because it's not my decision, it's the council's decision because it's policy. And so I can't put what I want, it has to come from the council. And so in the document, it has specific questions for the council to answer about which direction they want to go in. So the council has to provide that information.
Okay, we'll try to do a meeting with you the latter part of this week, and then that way we can.
Out of the office for the rest of this week, so it'll have to be next week.
Okay.
I'm available to meet. Just let me know and we can set it up.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Stamp. I'm sorry, Banks.
It's fine, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to say on this. I think that we reviewed it thoroughly. I think that we had an opportunity to look at what Ms. Griffin has sent. I don't think that there were any objections. I think that the reason there was no input, like you said, that we're all fine with it. So I think that this is packaged up and ready to go.
Packaged and ready. I'd like to hear that.
Packaged
Come on
up
from the
and ready to go.
police department. I see you in the back. Come on back and tell us something and make sure you're on the same page, everybody on the same page. And is there any concerns we have from the police department? Hi, Mom and Dad. All right.
Robert West, Jackson Police Department License Permit Division. We've also had an opportunity to, speak with Ms. Griffin and to give our input as it relates to the taxi cab ordinance. The only thing in the new agreement that the police was requesting was a increase with the taxi cab license, because currently they are only charging something like $20 for a taxi cab license. And so what we were suggesting in this particular ordinance was, if they were, and we say they meaning the city, if we are going to change the number of taxi cabs that's required to have a taxi cab company in Jackson, then the company, instead of paying $20 a year, then a company would pay between $250 and $500 a year, and then that would cover the company as well as the drivers, and they would not have to pay for the $20 for the driver's license, which at that point it would increase the revenue for the city, because currently we're only collecting something like $1,600 a year for all of the taxi companies together. If we allow an individual to have his own taxi cab company and they pay the $500 a year to the city, then our revenue would probably go up something like 1,000%, because we currently have about 42 drivers that's only paying about $20. Those drivers would like to be able to have their own company, because they're currently paying individual cab companies anywhere from $125 to $250 per week. So the cab drivers were saying that we are paying anywhere from $6,000 a year to $12,000 a year to work for a company. And if we could just pay the city $500 a year, then that would be better for them. And so the cab drivers that wanted to have their own company did not have any opposition against us doing that. And so outside of that, that was really the main thing that the police department wanted to see done, so that we could increase the revenue of the city. And when the cab driver come in to purchase their privilege license, they would just pay the $500 directly to the Signs and License Division, which then would take the police department out of having to collect the fees for taxi cab, and then we could concentrate more on the enforcement part of the taxi cab companies, because we would have so many. And so that was
How much you foresee that generating?
I'm sorry, give it to me.
How much do you foresee that generating?
Well, currently we only collecting between $1,400 and $1,600 a year. With the 40 drivers, roughly about $20,000 a year. So we would receive an increase of about $18,000 a year for the city of Jackson, just by simply passing the ordinance and allowing a person to open up a cab company with one car and pay the city $500, because currently they're only paying $20 right now.
Would the money be earmarked for certain in particular?
I mean, it would go into the city's general fund. Of course, the police department, we would love to have it, of course, but as it is right now, the way that the funds go into the city, it goes into the general fund. But yeah, we would love to have it if possible.
Dr. Banks?
Yes, sir. Councilman, Mr. Chair, I think that herein is where the problem was, if I'm not mistaken. The problem was that the cab drivers felt like that we were imposing or forcing them to pay a fee that Uber drivers didn't have to pay.
Let me go a little deeper, Mr. Banks. On this issue, the cab drivers wanted to be able to have a one-car taxi company, like the Uber drivers can have a one-car deal.
Right.
So what we were pushing for was for the ability for a cab driver to have a one-man shop, because before the rules said that you had to have 8 vehicles to start a cab company. And so this was that happy medium compromise to say, okay, well, if you want to start a cab company, you can start a cab company with your wife as a dispatcher at the house and you as a driver, and you can go start a cab company. So this lowered the bar for small businesses to get in the game of taxi cab business operating.
So we had that as part of the ordinance.
Okay.
Ms. Griffin?
Made a change, and I don't want to tell you anything wrong, but what I'll do once I get back to the office is do a memo. I think that we did incorporate
And I
the
have it.
police department's request.
The fee, but I think what Councilman Stamps is saying, we want to make sure and give the small business an opportunity to start a company.
If I remember correctly, correctly, I don't think that we did it with just one cab company. I think we reduced the number of cabs required. So I think whereas it used to be 8,
Right.
if I remember correctly, we reduced 5. But I'm not sure. I need to verify.
And I was
that.
pushing towards 1,
Right.
you know, but I know
If that's one
they
of
were
those
reduced.
policy decisions. we
Okay,
need
so
to-
they're at 3?
They're like 3 now, but I was pushing to make it 1.
Okay. Could we get you to get with Ms. Griffin?
I will, sir.
So we can, because I think, and I don't know the feeling of the body as a whole, but I think I heard several council members say it, to give everybody an opportunity, one would be the threshold to make sure we can establish some.
Little context, Mr. Stokes. The other issue was like with the record services, we don't require you to have 4 records
Correct.
to start a record service. And the record is transporting people because when he picks your car up off the side of the road, you get in the passenger seat and ride home with him. You know, so we should look at this a little differently.
Okay, Dr. Foote?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got some questions. I don't think I saw the one you emailed out because it was probably sent to my city council email, which I don't check on a regular basis. But I do want to see the thing. If you could, before we leave here, if you could get someone to print copies off of the.
On the print the last.
Oh,
email
good.
that was
Okay, that'd be great. The other question I think that was, there were a couple of things that were sticky questions. One was flexibility on pricing, so they could compete, so the taxi cab drivers have a better chance to compete with Uber. And the other was,
Did we address that?
In the last council meeting, I think you all decided on a set fee. I don't remember how much it was. Let me.
okay. And the other one was this,
Just give us a memo so we'll
the
know that.
treatment of making it, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the availability of cabs for disabled.
I think she addressed that.
That was in the last version that went out. What I'll do is go through, I'll resend the last version that went out. Then I'll do a memo that kind of does the sticking points on things that you all
Those
need
two,
to decide.
yeah, those things. The thing that Councilman Stamp said and the 2 things he.
Right, and with the understanding that, you know, everybody's not gonna be happy, because I know the
Right.
independent cab drivers, they're the ones who won't.
Right?
But the cab companies who already have the 5 to 8 drivers, they're the ones who didn't want. I'll make a note of it and put
Okay.
who.
All right, let me get Ms. Tillman first, Ms. Tillman.
No, I'm just, Mr. Cab drivers always come each year. But looking at what's going on nationally, and we don't want a company to come in and take advantage over local people. That's the main question. How can we regulate to make sure it's a kind of even playing field? If some of our ordinances are antiquated and need to be amended, thrown out or come up with some new ordinance, we don't want to make sure local people who've been in business or want to go into business has opportunity. Uber can go out there just like that.
Right.
It's
And they're
true.
rolling.
The only issue with us, like Uber and Lyft and vehicle for hire services, is that the state has preempted the city, like those organizations, and so we cannot incorporate anything as it relates to them in our ordinance. We're kind of restricted to only being able to regulate the taxi cabs, like that. We can't do anything to even it unless we drop our rates. And so you can make it even like that, but it's one of those things, they're not going to be happy because they'll never be able to compete through our ordinance. We can't drop as low as Uber. Like, we have different requirements in terms of insurance. We have different requirements in terms of where you're located. Uber doesn't necessarily regulate those.
Yeah, I understand that. But looking at state regulation, Uber policy, look at our ordinance. We want to make sure that we need to change ours in any way so our people can be competitive. I guess that's a good way to say it.
Okay, Mr. Stamps, and we're gonna move to the next one.
For the American with Disabilities issue, I believe lowering the required number of vehicles would put someone in the play of having a one-car disabled taxi service. And I think that the free market will populate that. If all you had to do was buy one disabled vehicle and to offer taxi service, we may have 2 or 3 people that would purchase one handicap accessible vehicle that could get into that business. But also, there are several people who have handicap accessible vehicles already for their grandmother or somebody they're taking care of. This will give them the ability to, on the days where they're not taking care of their family member, they could use that vehicle to make money to take care of the rest of their bills, because a lot of them aren't able to work, but they have a handicap accessible vehicle in the driveway, and they could get into that business by using that vehicle when they're not using it for their family member to generate some revenue.
Now, in terms of item number 23, is this how we have the ordinance? I think we have merged some things for the ordinance.
We did. We changed the heading of it.
We got this.
She need to see an agenda.
Okay.
All right, legal. Now, what do we do? As for 23, do we remove it off the agenda, or do we change the heading, amend the heading to leave it in committee so we can vote it out? We'll let y'all think about it. We'll do it at another next meeting. Well, I think that's what we did. I thought we had voted on it at the last meeting to change the heading and everything for 23. Yeah. Different. Okay, we don't have to do it today, though. Okay, thank you. If we'll go to 6, Mr. Blunson, I'm gonna ask Mr. Councilmember Tillman if he would check with Mr. Blunson about Nathan Booker Road, Flat Chapel Road.
Yeah, that caused a major uproar.
It did, so we're gonna
Yeah,
remove.
we want to strike that one.
Oh, we will remove.
They wouldn't even let me change that street to Barack Obama. This is in Presidential Hill. Right, they wouldn't even let me change the street to Barack Obama for the president in Presidential Hill.
Okay, so
for the record, if council,
yes, sir.
No problem. I would just ask that we strike that one from the.
Okay,
from the,
it's been
from
properly moved that we
I move we strike that one from the.
Item number 6 from the. We can remove it.
Yeah, we can remove it.
Just need a motion and second. It's been second.
I motion that we remove this item from the agenda.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. All in favor? Raise your hand. And opposed? Item passed unanimously. We're gonna remove item 6, and I think you said Barack Obama.
Well, no, I said that they wouldn't even let me rename Flag Chapel for Barack Obama.
Can we? It's not on the agenda yet. Can we look at starting by the zoo at Park Place?
So Mr. Tillman and I talked about this issue a while back because we were looking at a corridor that crosses an interstate. And that Capitol Street, Clinton Boulevard, I told him I'd go to war for Clinton Boulevard and Capitol Street if he takes it on down to through his ward.
Well, I also look at Ellis Avenue and Park Place. Park Place and Ellis Avenue, same street.
Right.
You know, so we'll look at both of them and try to bring
whatever corridor is best. I do think that we should recognize the president in a substantial way with a major corridor in the city of Jackson.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're trying to make sure we don't keep you all day. We got about 14 more minutes. Now, Mr. Stamps, the land bank, they're going to get with you on that. That's item 11, right?
I'll hold back on the rest of mine for other council colleagues' issues they would like to press forward on.
All right, now, item number 33, could we take that off the agenda, clerk? It's in committee, but I think that has been satisfied. It was my items. Could we remove that? And I think 34, legal look at it, I think as of 34, since we've already passed the lawsuit against Siemens, this item is not moot.
It's not no longer.
34, could we have that removed also? I know maybe it's not the time now, but we got to talk about these convenience stores and security. We'll do that at another meeting. I think, last week, we had someone at the convenience store kill somebody, and then somebody got shot at a store, another store. So these stores is creating that situation where something got to be done. We got to look at it and some kind of positive manner to see what we can do to work with the Indian community to find some kind of win-win. Now, 59, and I tried to get somebody, and legal might know, Dr. Hatcher put it on the agenda, this bfac.com.
What's that app?
Is there anyone here from his office could tell us what we need to do, voted out committee, leaving committee? Are they still supporting it, or do they still need it?
I don't know.
Anybody from administration?
This is on the app, Dr. Kumar.
That's
bfac.com, item 59.
not his issue though.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Could you check with them and find out whether they want it still on the agenda, removed from the agenda, and give us some idea what's their feelings on this item? If they can get us a memo to all the committee members, it would help us tremendously.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman, one issue that's holding back a lot of these honorary street renamings and some of these other things is our policy analyst position not being filled.
Yeah.
Because we can't vote some of these things out until some of those things get taken care of.
I agree.
So if we can move forward.
What's the status of that clerk, the policy? Because and the clerk said she was going to look at, some of this is not even needed tonight. So why you got to get gas company, those people that sign off, that wasn't even part of the city for the longest.
You're
and
speaking
I know
of the
you looking
renaming?
at changing ordinances or something.
The policy analyst.
The policy analyst was the first one.
Okay. Christy Moore, City Clerk. In regards to the policy analyst position, I sent Councilman Tillman and Priester an email on Friday, giving them the status and asking to move forward on getting that position filled because of the desires of the council. So I'll be getting with Councilman Tillman today, hopefully, if you've got time to speak to me about that. In regards to the renaming policy, I was going to get with that department to see what other cities, and I've gotten what Hattiesburg can do, to see how we can streamline that process, because what the issue is, they have to go out and get the 50+1 signatures, and that has become kind of a concern of them being out in the neighborhoods. So my suggestion was going to be, if they go, can community improvement officer go along with them so that they'd have some kind of protection as they try to get those signatures from the people after they send them the letter in the first place.
Yeah. Councilman Stamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the clerk's office prepare the documentation necessary for the petition for the ones I have? I'll go get my own signatures.
Okay.
And if you could just prepare the documentation
That you go out with? Okay.
and I'll make sure that I get the signatures for the
Okay.
people who live in my area for the ones I have on the agenda. And I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Councilman Priester has on the agenda 17 parking meters and parking in downtown. And I hope that someone would explore and look at the possibilities. We had the museums and no meters. You by the Capitol, where you talking about Monument, there's no meters. So I don't know exactly to what extent his exploration was on parking meters and parking in downtown. But if we're trying to generate money, that would have been a money generator. Especially trying to get meters. If you, any place you go, whether it's hotels or where the museums, you got parking meters near them anywhere you go. So I hope we'll revisit, and at the next meeting we can get Councilmember Priester. Yes, sir, you gonna, Dr. Kumar?
Yes, Mukesh Kumar, planning. For parking, we are looking for all the parking, not only upgrading the parking, but also where parking is needed, parking meters rather. And I can't say that you're going to have something from us within the next week or so, but please do expect a pretty thorough study of parking and a plan for how do we improve the change from the current coin-based parking to credit card and all of that stuff. So that's fairly high on our importance.
Councilman Stamps, on item number 22, I'll come right to you, Mr. Foote.
Okay, no problem.
On item 22, when you talk about detection of lead and copper in our water, and that's the biggest complaint we keep hearing from people today. They saying they don't drink our water anymore because it's not clean or good. And
Right.
are you still looking at?
I would love to move on this item. We were waiting for some information from Public Works, but I would love to require this testing so that we shouldn't wait for the state of Mississippi to come to us and tell us that there's something wrong with our system. We should have a mandatory system that's required by law, not just by practice. So by practice, there's a practice that goes forward, but it's not required by law. And so we were trying to evolve by law a testing requirement for contaminants and such inside our water system.
Have you had a conversation with the new Public Works Director?
Not on this issue, but I'm still waiting for a meeting with the mayor's administration. It's on my list to discuss. Whenever I can get a meeting, we'll move forward with the discussion.
So we're leaving it on the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Foote?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comment was just related back to the museums. We had a discussion about the museums as it related to parking meters. In addition, I think we ought to do something with the Eudora Welty Library. Right now, the library is compromised because of roof issues and mold and other things. And when you're standing in front of those beautiful museums, you look out there, the first thing you see is the backside, really tacky side of Eudora Welty Library with cooler, the air-conditioned coolers and all kind of stuff like that. And the fact is that that's a really valuable property. There are people out there who would have an interest in, taking that over and redoing it completely as a, place for tourists who come to see the museum to stay and eat at and other things like that. And so it's not on the agenda here, but it's something I think we ought to think about.
Sell it for a hotel.
Right.
We find okay, item 15, if you look at that for a second, and I'll see about taking off. We passed an ordinance to close Noosa nightclub on Meg Evers Boulevard. People were getting killed in there, I think Williams Lounge, every other month. And at the time, Peter Tableson was the attorney for the city. He went to court, he got it closed. But what happens is that they just change names and they change people and they reopen them. We got to find a way. If they're gonna be closed, they're gonna be closed. Cause only thing they do, once they change names and paperwork and open it, you still have the drugs in there, the killing, the cutting, the fighting. And we need to make sure that some kind of way, once we close them, they're closed. I know there are some concerns about the Topless nightclub in Jackson near the cemetery. When they first said, Mr. Tillman, they were gonna bring Topless in this city, it was supposed to be in certain areas only. But now they're beginning to expand throughout this city, and that's one thing you don't want. You want a citizen-friendly city. And when you start with those kind of activities, it leads to other kind of problems. So I hope that legal would look at this issue dealing with nuisance night spots in the city, what we have to do to make sure that when they close, they're not temporarily closed, they close for good. Mr. Stamps, we brought up about the Topless thing. I know you've been having problems, people blaming you in your area for that Topless place, like it was something that you had proposed and done.
Right, and that was a zoning change that was made a long time ago. But I do believe there's political ways that we could have not had that happen. And I think that's a great loss, having a place, an establishment like that inside of a residential area. So that's another reason why I want to make sure that we go forward with this moratorium. I'll add that one to the moratorium as well, because we have to safeguard our areas of town. I'm not. I think that they should be in one area. Most cities have a red light district and stuff like that, but just because somebody wants to put a strip club somewhere doesn't mean that they should. And so hopefully legal can tell me if it's legally sufficient by Thursday, and we can move on that item and get it on the agenda for Tuesday.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, finally, Mr. Whitwell had on the agenda by Capital City smoke-free air ordinance. Now, we're finding that in spots that had been declared off limit that you couldn't smoke, people beginning to smoke again. Now, I don't know, I'm not a smoker, but I don't know how you feel, whether we need to make sure that if places are required not to smoke, that they don't smoke, versus the limited enforcement that they're telling you can't smoke play, but people smoking and nobody enforcing it. So I don't know, we want to look at this city smoke-free air ordinance again and look at what needs to be done to tighten it up, or whether we just want to remove it off the agenda and leave it. Yes, sir.
A little background for my colleagues who may not remember or who may not have been here for this issue. One of the issues that were brought forward by the UMMC over in Councilor Lindsay's ward. They were saying that there are patients who will wheel their oxygen tank out of their little, what do they call it thing, that IV thing, out to the sidewalk and smoke a cigarette, because they've declared the establishment that you can't smoke in certain areas. So they were wanting to make them go somewhere else across the street to smoke a cigarette. And I know that some people may not like the sight of people with an IV thing out on the sidewalk smoking a cigarette because they can't smoke a cigarette on the hospital ground. But the other side of the coin is, I don't know if I want folks pushing the IV cart across State Street, to get to the other side of State Street to smoke a cigarette. So I just want to bring home the nexus of that when we had the discussion at that time.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank y'all so much for being here. We tried to keep you only 1 hour. It's 2 o'clock. Legal and unrest? Anything else we need to discuss? Dr. Kumar? Yes. Dr. Lynn?
Remind me again when the next meeting is.
Thursday.
It's this Thursday?
No, next Thursday.
Well, Mr. Stokes, one important thing is these properties that we were discussing earlier, the developer is now at a point where he needs to know whether or not he's going to get these parcels. I mean, it's really at a very sensitive time in this development, and if there's any way we could move these out of committee and onto the city council agenda for next week, I really would be grateful, because it's critical.
Okay. All right, we'll meet next Thursday. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much. Now, that's only an hour and a minute now, Mr. Tillman. I ain't keep you past it. It'll be taking up too much of my time.